welcome to another session of Informally Formal. Our today's topic is rather global in nature. We're going to be talking about the current world and its impact on the future generation. And I am delighted because we have today to talk about this very vast and important subject, Shafqat Anwar. Shafqat Anwar is the Deputy Group CEO, Operations Technology, Ahli United Bank, a $40 billion bank out of the Middle East in Bahrain, and with its presence in over 8 countries, including the United Kingdom. He started his career in, as a matter of fact, Grindlays Bank in Dhaka in 1984, and has then since been overseas since '87 with various senior international management positions. So without further ado, let's just welcome Shafqat to our show. Shafqat, welcome.
Thank you very much, Akber. Very nice to see you.
All right, it's such a pleasure to have you. So Shafqat, let me dive into my first question. Where we stand today in the world is something no one was prepared for, obviously. We all know that, right? Clearly everyone is uncertain, but still clinging on to optimism. What is your view on the current conundrum that we face?
Yeah, this is quite an unprecedented. And as you know, this pandemic, what we are facing after almost 100 years, something very unique in nature. And at the same time, the supply side and demand side got impacted. The supply chains got impacted, the cash flows got impacted, the business processes, the very basics of the transactions, everything have been facing challenges. So this is pretty unique, and due to these sudden kind of eventualities, not many businesses and not many entities are basically ready for it. So some of them had to struggle hard, some of them were relatively more well prepared. So it had been a very challenging 6 to 7 months for everyone globally.
You're absolutely right. So tell me, how do you see this current situation that we find ourselves in? How is that going to impact, you believe, how people work, live, and play in the future?
Yeah, so already what we have seen basically that the work culture, the way we used to carry out our day-to-day employments, jobs in the organizations, the way we used to deliver the production services, all these things have gone through a lot of changes, modifications, evolutions. And work from home, which was earlier, we have seen that only some of the software companies and some very limited organizations used to basically have that culture. But what we have seen now, that globally, almost every organization, irrespective of their nature of business, have been resorting to the work from home culture. And at least particularly the peak of the pandemic, many of the organizations, and I can mention about my organization, at one point of time, 75% of our people were working from home. So other than that, as you know, the travel industry, the entertainment industry, the hospitality industry, these have been severely impacted.
Shafqat, the economic side of it is rather apparent. I would like for you to reflect also on the geopolitical. You also, of course, reflected on the technological side of things. So the economic side of things, the technological side of things is pretty apparent to everyone. But give us your view on the geopolitical and social dimension of change.
What we have seen over the past 1 decade, I think this is my personal view, that the globalization happened too fast. And it probably, although it is the best thing to do, and I'm very pro globalization myself, but I think what has been overlooked is the national pride, national identity, and some of the basic things. It should have been done probably in a slightly more balanced way. So what we have seen over the past, I should say, 10 to 15 years, there is a resurgence of these populist, nationalist movements all over the world. And we never thought that it will hit countries, big countries like USA. You know, if you look at USA, if you look at Brazil, if you look at India, if you, in many of the European countries, and a very traditional, sort of very liberal, open countries in the Scandinavia also, there are these nationalist resurgences.
Let me interrupt here one
Yeah,
second before we move on. Real quickly,
yeah,
reflect on what you were saying. You know, if history is any guide, then we know that after the Great Recession of 1929, the collapse of the stock market, unilateralism took hold, and the world saw its trade go by half. Economies suffered as a result. So after Second World War, basically countries, economies, they came together and understood that multilateralism, opening up trade and stuff was the way to prosperity. That's already been proven. So now with Brexit starting with Brexit, and then of course, United States and trade war with China. And we know the trend that's been going on. But unfortunately, as you also alluded, that this is hopefully a short-term thing, because trade has already been proven that, you know, when you go unilateral and, you know, erect trade barriers through tariffs and what have you, it does not help. That has already been proven. So I hope the world will come full circle and realize that when you open up trades and or take away trade barriers and stuff like that, it basically automatically creates competition, both internally, externally. So it fosters innovation. Everything good comes out of it. Let's just put it this way.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. I think this is exactly my point too. And I was coming to this topic as well, the trade war and the China-US conflict. You know, what is happening, you know, this is very unfortunate, I think. It's a very short-term transactional approach, particularly has been taken by USA. And if you look at China, they are a much more shrewder country. You know, they have thousands of years of civilization behind them, and they are, some of these trade wars may temporarily impact them, but in the longer run, I think they probably will come out as winners. So what will have to be done is, instead of going into this conflicting situation and combating mode, basically it should be a collaborative approach. Otherwise, it will be, everybody will be a loser. These trade wars, nobody will come out as winners. As you know, that the projection is from the terms of GDP growth and from the terms of the size of the economy, China is going to overtake USA. So the shift of the economies, and as you know, a lot of emerging economies like Brazil, Indonesia, and South Africa, Russia obviously is there, and even in the next phase of 11 countries, Bangladesh is also one of them. So in the next 20 to 30, 40 years time, in the global economy, there will be a major shift of economic power globally. So if USA or Western Europe, luckily, most of the mainstream European countries like Germany and France, they are much more level-headed and balanced actually. So that's the glimmer of hope. That's the glimmer of hope. And so if this approach is taken, then ultimately it will not be a very good thing for US economy. So economic shift, this is one thing is going to happen in the future if we look at. So today's major economic powers, that is going to significantly change.
So our topic of interest today is, how does it affect the next generation? So we need to, of course, talk about whatever that we see, the shifts that we see, where we find ourselves today, and where we are headed in the future. How does it affect the future of the next generation? Reflect on that a little bit, especially before we go to this question that I just asked you, reflect on the social dimension of things. how is the current pandemic, has it affected the social dimension of things?
See, the social dimension, if you look at it, when we were growing up, we are growing up as social animals, actually. Now, this generation already, they are kind of a bit aloof in the sense that because of the social media, the friends are through Facebook and WhatsApp and things like that. So the thing is that socially, that social distancing, what we had been practicing after COVID, that has been getting practiced by the younger generation for the past probably 10, 15 years. I think this phenomena of the pandemic, this is going to be relatively a temporary phase. In a matter of 1.5 years, 2 years time, this is what I perceive, that things will gradually come back to its normal course. But for your main question about the future generation, I think there is no alternative now to other than emphasizing on the technology. My personal view about Bangladesh's three driving force of the economy is, one is currently, I'm talking about the current situation, the export sector, particularly the garments exports. The second is the remittances, and the third is the agricultural sector. So in Bangladesh, I think we also, there is a need for an emphasis of modernizing our agricultural system. So I think this is one area we cannot overnight make the country a technology-driven, technology-focused country.
I think you put all the points very brilliantly. So there is absolutely no disagreement from my part in terms of the next generation, that they need to be a lot more technologically savvy, one. The other, I believe, Shafqat, is that not everyone needs to en masse go and get a college degree. Particularly, you see in many countries, kids at a very early age, they learn coding and become very successfully employed, or very target-oriented vocational training is what is needed. Technologically oriented, of course. So, and then the other point that you mentioned in Bangladesh, of course, understand that agriculture every year is a shrinking part of our total GDP as we shift to more production-based as well as more service-oriented economy. Also bear in mind that technological advances in the agriculture sector, we have seen quite a bit, because if you recall, after independence, we used to have a tremendous shortage of food items, whereas our population has more than doubled. Our food production has multiplied quite a few times. So that's a tremendous credit to the country for having achieved that. But yes, I agree with you, more technological advancement, there is room still for more technological advances. So very quickly, would you reflect, Shafqat, on the advent of social media, and that how does that impact the future generation? So there are good sides to it, but then we also know that there are the side effects, the ill effects of social media, where the next generation, their attention span is next to nothing. And as you well know, each time they engage in social media, they post something, and then someone puts a like, there is a small burst of dopamine that hits them, and they're so used to that feel-good effect that I find to be very alarming. So we are having a generation come up that does not understand that there are certain things in life, like I like to say, pregnancy takes 9 months. You cannot make it happen in 9 days just because it's in the age of social media. Anything worth having takes time and effort. So I am afraid that our next generation's attention span, and somehow they get exposed to Mark Zuckerberg and others, and they somehow think that, well, it's good to have aspirations and hopes, but then at the same time, you need to be rooted. We need fundamental skills. We still need STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. We need to be strong in that. But at the same time, overall education in terms of solid critical thinking and stuff, needs a lot of focus. What are some of your reflections?
I think it's an excellent question, actually. It's a very relevant topic. And probably you are asking a wrong person this question because I'll be biased. We are from the same generation. When I joined my career in 1984 as a management trainee of Greenlays, we were still having handwritten ledgers and journals, you know. So we were moving to just the very beginning of computerization in Bangladesh. So, and then from there, you know, we have reached a stage in my career, I've seen over almost 3.5, 4 decades, major transformational changes. Many of my young, very bright trainees, you know, I interview people and recruit them. They do not know, they're very brilliant, but the accounting entries of debit and credit, if I ask some of the basic questions, they will not know, because I know, because we have done it manually at that point of time. So I feel that we are very lucky to see that aspect. So your question is absolutely critical, that you have to have your roots. You can grow your branches, but if your root is not strong, that's going to be dangerous. So this is a concern, this is a fear which I share with you. I also think, and when I look at my young, even my children, their reading habits is nowhere near my reading habits. And I tell them all the time, please read, please read. Their knowledge comes from the Facebook posts and from Twitters and from YouTube. I should not generalize, but again, social media is very powerful as well. There are positives and negatives. So we have to find out a balanced way. I think this is where the educational institutions, the teachers, the mentors, the guides, they have to tell and they have to imbibe this among the younger generation that, okay, you obviously you do participate in social media, but at the same time, you acquire the knowledge behind it, and as you rightly say, it's not only education, it's enlightenment. Without enlightenment, education is just a degree, it's a paper. So this is how I look at it. My views probably are old style and traditional.
Right. Let me interject real quickly here. You know, one of the things I always feel is that education and learning, you know, getting a piece of paper that says that you have a degree, people sometimes think that they have arrived. What they don't understand is that that is just the beginning of the learning process. Learning happens in the actual workplace. How do we get our kids to get interested in learning? Everything with instant gratification, the world that we live in, the world of instant gratification. Unfortunately, what that is doing is there is so much information. So just because you've heard something does not mean you understand that, does not mean that you know it. You see, so that's the challenge. Oh, I've seen this, I've seen this, I've seen this. But you do not necessarily have the wherewithal to put it together for it to become what we call knowledge, for it to become a true learning experience. So I feel that there is a huge need for imbibing I would say, the learning ethos, you know, learning, that learning is a lifelong thing.
Yes, right? Yes. I think it will come through, because see, the history of civilization, if you look at, it had been a history of progress. It has been a history of advancement, and a human nature, you know, is very flexible, and through the process of evolution, I think we'll definitely have some kind of balance in this. And there are still very brilliant young people I see.
Oh,
those
absolutely.
Yeah, those who are very well read, very intelligent, and all this. But again, but what is happening is the social behavior, what we are familiar with over a long period of time, that is going to gradually change, and people will become a bit, I think, more individualistic and a more kind of interest focused, you know. But I think this is the process of life.
Shafqat, I agree with that 100%, because we do not want to come across as, you know, because we used to hear our parents say that things were so good during our time, you know, but the next generation did even better. So I am, alarmed by some of the things that I see, but I haven't, that does not mean that I'm less hopeful. I am very
Mm.
hopeful in,
Mm.
the next generation and how smart they are, and that
That's
they're
it.
going to transform the world. So yeah, I am absolutely very well aware of that. All I'm saying is that it is alarming, though, that we see quite a big, large population of the young generation is getting detracted by the presence of social media. So I'm sure they'll
Yes.
figure it out. One last
Yes.
thing, Shafqat, in closing, as you know, change is the only constant. So the change that we see, the rapid change that we see, is here to stay, and change at an accelerated pace, Shafqat. So you
Yeah.
mentioned, of course, technological readiness and more technological education, all that. Beyond that, very quickly, in less than a minute, because we're end of
Mm.
we've reached the
Yeah.
end of our session here. What else would you suggest to the next generation to be ready?
I think you look ahead, look positive, adapt with the times. This is what I'll tell the younger generation. And there is no age bar to accept technology. Even anybody, even if it is not from the younger generation, we can adapt technology. And there are, the opportunities. There are wealth of knowledge and opportunities. This generation, they are luckier than our generation. And obviously, I fully agree that they are a smarter generation, obviously. And some of the things which I have said, I may not have the sense of empathy. I cannot think from where they are looking at the world, So,
Exactly.
but I think my statement is look ahead and look positive and adapt with time.
Very well said, Shafqat. Very brilliantly said. So I guess on that note, we will end it. Shafqat, once again, I know you're a very busy person and a very important person. So thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
very much for giving us the time, Shafqat. It
much.
was a true pleasure for us. So to our audiences all around, I thank you for joining us for this incredible session, and the dialogue will continue. With that,
Thank
I sign off. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.